Hello and welcome to another episode of The Demon's Den, your stop for horror history, stories, and creepy curiosities. I'm your host Hex, and I'm joined by my partner, Shade.
Oh, greetings everyone.
And in this episode, we're gonna go over some of the strangest and most peculiar ways people have passed on to the other side. We've all seen the usual ways. You know, old age, getting shot, heart disease, car crash, drowning. The list is endless and, quite obviously, tragic. But on that endless list, we have the unusual ways people have died. Like Greek philosopher Sisyphus, who died of laughter in 3rd century BC after seeing an intoxicated donkey. Or something even like getting a brain-eating amoeba from a public swimming pool, which has happened multiple times in multiple states. We have compiled a list of these strange passings, and these are the ones that stood out as the most gruesome and most odd. Be warned, this video is not for the faint of heart. The content discussed is historically accurate, but that doesn't make it any less grotesque or brutal. With that, my viewers, let's get into it. We'll start things off a little slow with probability deaths. By that, I mean the chances of these deaths occurring is rare, and could be up to a 1 in a million chance of it happening. Like getting game overed by a meteorite. There is a 1 in 510,000 chance that a meteor's impact would strike where you live. There is, however, a 1 in 765 million chance that you will be turned to red mist by this meteor. It is important to note that people's lives have been devastated by meteor showers in the past, but no one has ever been recorded to be struck and killed by a meteor directly. Another one is death by cow. Now, I'm not talking about antagonizing a cow and it attacks and kills you. This does happen though. So much so, in fact, that you're more likely to get killed by a cow than a shark. But what I'm talking about is dying from a falling cow. I'm not talking about cow tipping either, that was a myth. I'm talking about you're on a walk, or you're in your home, and just out of nowhere, you get obliterated by a cow that fell from like a cliffside or the edge of a mountain. This has happened, and it happened in Brazil in 2013, where a cow fell on this guy's bedroom roof. He later passed due to his injuries. While we're on the topic of falling, and it's summer, I gotta remind you, try not to sit under any fruiting palm tree. Falling coconuts have been known to crack skulls, break bones, and even kill you. A full-size coconut weighs about 3 pounds, and some of those trees can reach up to like 100 feet. So a 3-pound coconut falling from 100 feet, that'll take about 2.49 seconds before reaching your head at about speeds of 38 miles per hour, which will equal your head becoming a modern art created by Gallagher. In this unforgiving world, unexpected death is, well, weirdly enough, almost a comfort. I mean, I'd much rather die in my sleep. Unlike these poor souls who clearly saw it coming and felt every excruciating second of it. Gonna pass this one off to Shade. You know how he likes things more, gruesome.
Oh, Hex, you little tease, you. How very human of you. Oh, humans. You humans are so delightfully twisted it makes my spine tingle with excitement to talk about your brutal methods of torture. I'm sure all the sinful souls out there would just love a quick twist of the neck and just end it all instead of a drawn-out death, but... C'est la vie. During the Salem witch trials, torturous acts such as dunking were performed. This was when an accused witch was strapped to a chair-like device called the ducking chair, and submerged for several seconds with each dip, effectively making the victim thrash about in a panic while they gasp for air. They would either confess to something they hadn't done and be killed, or not confess to something they hadn't done and be killed. It was a real damned if you don't and damned if you do kind of situation, wasn't it? This wasn't even the worst that humans had to offer either. This form of torture was like some Weenie Hut Jr. kind of stuff. As early as 92 AD, there was a torture device known as the Brazen Bowl. It was a full-size hollow bowl that acted as a container, and it had to be one of the most deliciously evil objects mankind has ever created. It was an ancient torture device in which the condemned was locked inside of a hollow brass bowl and slowly roasted to death by a fire underneath, with their pleading, agonizing screams emerging as the bowls bellow. The victim's flesh would bubble and burn off their bones, hitting the sides of the bowl with a gurgling sizzle, while the white-hot brass would melt your skin and boil your spilling blood. I'd imagine you'd pass out from the pain after your eyeballs explode like a microwaved egg. Soon thereafter, the smell of roasted human and sizzling shit linger in the air. Sounds pretty bad, right? Well, tell me if this one sounds any worse to you. Going back even further, around 370 BC, a king would sentence a man to death for killing his brother. It was to be death by scaptism. This strange-sounding method of torture doesn't sound like torture at first. The condemned lays down in a boat with their hands and feet hanging out. If they get hungry, or when they feel like feeding, they pour honey and milk all over their face and in their mouth. Oh, but they can't move. The honey is sitting on their face, getting slowly infested by flies and other bugs while the heat of the sun cooks the sweet goo into his skin. His foul excrement fills the boat after being essentially force-fed sugar and milk fat. Vermin become attracted by the intoxicating aroma of condemned filth and gather in the boat, slowly starting to nibble at the fingers and toes as they are slowly devoured. Oh, but Shade, how can it get any worse? Being cooked to death and then being eaten to death after being cooked by sweet goo, oh, how can it get any worse? Oh, I'll tell you. Between the 9th and 11th centuries, those brutes known as the Vikings had a torture that is widely known as the most painful torture, and is compared to a Mortal Kombat brutality. The method is known as the Blood Eagle, and here's how it worked. The Blood Eagle involved cutting the ribs of the victim from their spine, breaking the bones outward to resemble wings, and then exposing the victim's lungs, which were pulled through the openings in the back to create a gruesome spectacle. The victim was likely to die after, or shortly after the procedure due to the severity of the injuries, and the extensive trauma inflicted. The malice you have to hold towards someone to do this. It must be enough to fill every thought you ever had with seething hate.
We don't always go the way we want to go. Sometimes we go in downright embarrassing ways. Only good thing is you're not alive to suffer the embarrassment of dying in that way. You ever seen Game of Thrones? Well, regardless if you have or haven't, there's a scene where someone of higher standing is shot through the chest while taking a dump. In other words, well, in their words, he was shot on the privy. I think that's the way Elvis died too, well, minus being shot by his son, but he did go on the toilet. Now that I think about it, dying by any of the 7 deadly sins would be an embarrassment. For example, like gluttony. Eating yourself to death is one way to go out, but then there's also getting crushed to death by a vending machine. Since 1978, over 37 deaths and over 100 injuries have been reported with people who are just too eager to get that snack-sized bag of Lay's. Lust is another embarrassing one. No one would ever want to die with their, a pecker-related injury. Unfortunately for you men, it happens a lot. And a lot of it is due to complications with erectile dysfunction, mainly the medication. Men with pre-existing heart conditions who take this have been known to suffer from strokes and heart attacks, and some have turned out to be fatal. Now the only hard thing is dealing with your funeral costs. Thank you for joining us for another episode of The Demon's Den. Join us next time for more spookums and creepy curiosities. Until next time, stay safe, lock your doors, and remember, you're more likely to die of a broken heart than to become Spider-Man. And if that breaks your heart, well, I'm very sorry.